This is BofC Live, the video and podcast series of Business of Cannabis. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com. Coming up next, it is our BofC Live segment, a conversation with Gasperin and Jay McMillan from Zentrella. They are using AI technology and Zentrella's neurotechnology platform. They put together a proven test to objectively quantify cannabis psychoactive effects. We discuss their approach and the benefits of the insights to cannabis that cannabis producers are finding from their insights. Here is a conversation with Gasperin and Jay McMillan from Zentrella. Hey guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Jay, for having us.
I'm excited to have you because it doesn't often happen this way, but when I was doing a little background about what we're going to talk about, I looked on the website and was completely intrigued. That doesn't happen a lot because I've done a lot of these. But Israel, we're going to go to you first. Tell me what Zentrella is so people also can be intrigued, and we'll post how to look up you guys with this video as well. But tell us a little about Zentrella.
Absolutely, Jay. So Zentrella is a neurotechnology company specialized in combining neuroscience with artificial intelligence with the goal of analyzing electrical brain activity in an objective way to understand how consumers feel after trying a cannabis product. And our first commercial application is, the use of our neurotechnology to document what type of cannabis experiences commercial available recreational products create for consumers. And this type of data is being used by producers and other type of cannabis companies in order to understand what is the performance of their products in terms of consumer experiences. We can talk about more about the value of the data that we generate, but it's for R&D purposes and marketing purposes. Overall, in a nutshell, that's what Zentrella is doing.
So I don't I use this. You would tell me this impact on my brain, basically. You'd be able to analyze.
Correct. So what we basically are doing is conducting consumer experience research. We have a large community of cannabis consumers that participate in our studies where they bring their products, they consume it exactly as they would do it at home or whatever they consume it. And, under that type of occasion, for example, watching TV or studying, whatever. So we replicate those scenarios and they consume that product in our research facility. Then we use our neurotechnology and other research tools in order to accurately document who you are as a consumer, what type of product you brought. So we have evidence of all of those two main factors that create that cannabis experience. And this is here is where we use our neurotechnology to objectively measure how participants feel after consuming that product. And what I mean by feel is what is the psychoactive experience created by that product at different time points during 5 hours, which is what it lasts the participation in our studies. And this database is what we are, creating in order to start understanding, okay, that vape product for this type of consumer is creating this type of consumer experience. And the most important aspect is that we are coming up with scientific evidence that back up the type of information. So producers and e-commerce solutions, etc., can leverage this content in order to comply with the regulations for informational promotions or for internal R&D to understand what is the performance of my product. How do I differentiate? What's the difference between my product versus the competitors in terms of consumer experiences? And based on that, come up with the strategies to differentiate them, to improve the formula, for the formulation of the products, et cetera, et cetera.
It seems groundbreaking to me, and I spend a lot of time doing this. And you're based in Hamilton, if I'm not right, in Hamilton, Ontario.
That's correct. Yeah. The research facilities in Canada.
And so, Jay, I see you shaking your head, obviously, and you're involved. Tell us a little bit about, from sort of your background in the cannabis space, what type of research, what does this research do to inform brands, product, R&D from your perspective?
Oh, it's huge. So when you look at it, when you're trying to create a product, right? You create a product, and in our current regulatory environment, you're sort of hamstrung, right? There's only certain things you can do. Even though you've got an R&D license, actually going through and running the proper tests to understand how a consumer is going to use the product, to get that usage and attitudinal study tied into how the product actually affects them is virtually impossible. So you end up doing two separate things. You end up doing this usage and attitudinal study, which asks people to recollect how they felt when they were high. What were they doing when they were high? What products were they using when they were high? What other things were they doing while they were high? And that's a hard thing for a consumer to remember necessarily, right?
If you're doing it right, yeah.
If you're doing it right, exactly. So hard to tie all of that back together to be able to say, this is what differentiates the product. On the other hand, you could get into some really deep, medical-like studies where you go out and you're drawing blood, and you're actually seeing, how quickly are the molecules actually hitting the bloodstream, and what from that, how much of that is actually hitting the bloodstream. So I can say, well, the onset was this amount of time, they got to this level of highness, it had a duration of that, but that's incredibly expensive. So LPs tend not to do that because it's hard, it's expensive, it's not if you will, not fluid enough as far as where our business is going. So by doing what Zentrella is doing, it actually allows you to be able to get that onset time, that Cmax, that how high am I actually getting? What's the duration? How long is someone actually staying high or having that effect? And then tying that back into the group to be able to understand how's that impact on the mood. So for someone who's developing a product, it allows me to be able to say, I've got a winner here, I don't. It allows me to be able to say, I've got a differentiator versus everything else in the marketplace. And it allows me to be actually able to track my products versus all the competitive products out in the marketplace. So super cool from that perspective. The other side is allows you to actually build out a huge amount of data that I can then say, as I bring this to market, here's how I can communicate it to the bud tender. So the bud tender can properly communicate it to the consumer to say, well, this beverage is going to do this for you, but that beverage is going to do this, right? And you actually can have this comparative and this discussion on a certain day, on a certain occasion. This is the beverage you may want to have. But, if you're having that celebration where you just want to have that giddy high, well, here's the product you actually want. Or if you're just a complete newbie to the space, well, this is what it's going to do for you. And that is such a differentiation in the marketplace to be able to provide that type of information and allow the R&D or the product developer to be able to get there. But then if you then tie that into the marketing side, well, geez, now I can actually start to categorize products, right? So through Zentrella, we can actually say, okay, here's all of the beverages as an example, and really drill that down and say, these are the beverages that are going to get you super, super high to the point of, you're done, if you will, right? And on the other hand, here's the other products that are going to get you that giddy high, or here's the products that are just going to allow you to be able to relax and enjoy your afternoon, right? So that allows you to actually start to categorize products as a retailer and serve the customer better, allow consumers to be able to better understand what they're actually getting involved with.
And it's the gap, super obviously, cool, that needs to be filled, and it's super compelling hearing both of you talk about it. I want to almost ask you, not to name names, but Israel, thinking about all the what's on the shelves now, right? Like, and knowing what sort of now, looking at those products, are you sitting in this weird spot where you're saying, oh man, they have missed the mark on marketing or branding or the consumers they're going after, because now you have more information than they had developing those products? Do you find yourself in this position saying, you know what, if they took this product and approached it this way, knowing the effects that we have, are you sort of doing a reverse engineering of how folks should be operating in the market?
Absolutely, Jay. So, what is happening is that during 2021, we conducted many hundreds of, consumer experience research participations with beverages and edibles and a couple of pre-rolled products. And it's very interesting to see, for example, that two products with the same amount of THC create a completely different consumer experience. While we cannot specifically claim what is the reason behind that difference, even though both products have the same amount of THC, because that will require advanced clinical research. It is proven with our neurotechnology that, for example, one beverage creates faster and stronger psychoactive experience than another beverage with the exact same amount of THC. Now, the other interesting part that we are kind of discovering or understanding is that, the industry tends to think that all the consumers want a fast and a strong product in terms of THC psychoactive potency. But the truth is that only applies for a specific type of consumer, which is maybe a frequent consumer that has experience in dealing with THC, right? They enjoy it. So they tend to think that, but the reality is that other type of consumers, like infrequent consumers, that they don't have that type of experience or tolerance, that type of products, they find them very strong, and the experience is not pleasant at all. So what we are helping cannabis companies is to understand, okay, this product creates this type of fast and strong experience, and this is the type of consumer that is actually enjoy the experience, and this is the type of experience that is being created by your product. Whereas the competition is not exactly your competition just because they have the exact same amount of THC. They are just targeting other type of consumers. So that's the type of insights that we are gaining by being able to objectively quantify, the psychoactive, experience created by two products with the same amount of THC. But also we have been able to now objectively quantify what is the actual difference between drinking, having a beverage versus an edible versus inhaling cannabis. That's another kind of, even though everybody knows that the experience will be different, having objective and accurate information about how the onset time changes and when you reach the maximum potency of that psychoactive experience has been very useful and kind of intriguing for the actual cannabis consumers. Yep. And finally, the other kind of interesting innovative component that we have identified is being able to start quantifying the inhalation, cannabis inhalation. For example, if you are vaping, today you cannot determine how high you will get because there's not a unit of measurement, right? So what we are kind of doing is that we are objectively quantifying or determining or documenting how many puffs participants are having when they bring their vape pen or their pre-rolls, and documenting with the neurotechnology or quantifying how high they are getting based on that number of puffs. So what we are kind of finding very exciting is that type of products now we can tell consumers how high they will get depending on the number of puffs that they will get. And I think that the innovative or interesting or exciting part here is that consumers tend to select products based on THC potency again. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get super high if you select a vape with high THC potency. What it just means is that maybe you just need to have 2 or 3 puffs and achieve that desired experience. So I think that will also change or transform the way consumers are will select vape pens or pre-rolls or just inhaling dry flower.
It's like the coolest, nerdiest cannabis shit there is. It really is, and I love it. I'm being that very, really, I love it. Jay, I want to ask you because obviously the landscape really, really well. You could probably line up all whatever 1,000 SKUs on the Ontario Cannabis Store, but marrying that up with sort of the research and the work that Zentrella is doing, like, are there just like Jay, are there gaping holes that like companies need to do R&D around because there isn't this product that is great for, that doesn't do the exact right thing for a 30-year-old woman? Like, are those gaps even becoming more clear from your perspective?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what's really interesting here is that this is the next level of both consumer research as well as product research, right? And product innovation. So when you think about it, not only are we able to now take a look at what's out there and just say, okay, I've categorized this is for the heavy consumer, and this is for the newbie consumer, and this is for the one that wants to be, X, Y, and Z, right? Which is what we've done today. And we've seen in the marketplace that there's no one brand that's really jumping out and really leading everywhere. There's not this huge brand loyalty. But when you start to tie in both the effects, right, and that education for the consumer, now I can start to differentiate the product. I can start to tie it into a brand, and I can start to educate that consumer, right? So now I can actually talk to them in a way that's going to make sense for the consumer. So it allows you to be able to hit that. One of the things, and Israel kind of alluded to it before when he was talking about, one product, that may have 10 milligrams and another product that may have 10 milligrams could affect the individual differently. Well, we've sort of known this. We've talked about it in the entourage effect, but how do you explain entourage effect to a new consumer coming into the marketplace? It's virtually impossible, right? It's like, what do you mean? It has to do with terpenes. What is terpenes, right? What is a flavor and aroma in cannabis? What does all that mean? Well, I can now tie that in, and I can hit a spot to say, yeah, here's the right product for that 30-year-old that really wants to just have a nice, relaxing evening, right? Wants to mellow out. Here's that opportunity for that 20-year-old, 20-something that wants to really have that fantastic concert event, right? Or that fantastic, experience of some kind, and really start to build out those products. So from a point of view of product development, absolutely huge, right? This is now gives you these insights that didn't happen before. The way market products have come to market, 1,500 products that are out in the landscape today, it's really been, okay, well, let's see, what color do we want to make it, right? What sort of flavor profile do we want to have, right? How many milligrams do we want to put in it? Do we want to mix it in with anything else? And that's been product development today. Now we actually take it that next level and we start to talk about the experiences, which is really where it's all about, right? Why is someone consuming cannabis? They're not necessarily consuming it just because it's got the right color. They're not consuming it because it's got the right brand, right? They want to understand what that experience is, but the regulatory environment we live in makes it hard for any of the LPs to communicate that. So this gives us a way to be able to objectively talk about it, show what that experience is, and then be able to target in those products. So when you look at the retailers today or the boards who are saying, you know what, I really need to rationalize all of my SKUs. I don't know whether the 200 SKUs of flower I have are really covering off my consumers, but I think 200 is too many, so I'm going to reduce it. Right. But they're reducing it based on sales, and their sales may be only there because when the consumer walks through the door, what do they have the opportunity to ask about? What's the price, and how much THC does it have? Right. After that, is the nug big or small? Right.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. When you were going through the different profiles, I wonder which product would be best for late 40-year-old men dealing with COVID restrictions right now in Ontario, because that's the one I think would sell.
That's the seller.
That would be a huge seller. But don't worry, I'm doing my own product research all the time over till January 17th. Israel and Jay, I really appreciate you taking. What's that?
Or the 26th.
Well, hey, how dare you? If it's going to be from the 17th to 26th, we're going to need stronger product for sure.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Israel and Jay, I really appreciate you making time and taking time. I'd love to come see what you guys are up to in Hamilton as restrictions ease, but I really appreciate the time today, and we look forward to connecting with you down the road, and kudos to the interesting work you guys are all doing.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That was BofC Live with Israel Gasperin and Jay McMillan. If you like this program, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you heard the show. It helps support the work we do. We're able to do what we do because of ongoing partnerships with Alterna Savings, Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Gallagher, Headset, and Torque and Mains. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com.